good morning to you. It is the Nikki Maduro Show coming to you live from Petaluma. Of course, Nikki has the day off. Well, she's not really, doesn't really have the day off. Not like she's lounging around eating bonbons at her house. She's got a second job. She's working to make a living. So we're keeping the home fires burning here on the Nikki Maduro Show until tomorrow when she returns. So thank you for spending another day with me. I'm Kim McAllister in for Nikki Maduro today. We've got a lot to talk about. But before we get right to it, I'd like to ask you to click like and subscribe. So a little click on the thumbs up button and subscribe if you haven't already. That is free and it really makes a big difference. If you could also check out the website, thenickimaduroshow.com. Well, that's where you'll find not only the Maduro merchandise, if you want to be a Madurable, you can also find the Patreon and the PayPal links. So you can support us that way. And of course, the super stickers are open and live and ready for business here on the Nikki Maduro Show. All right. So it's funny. Sometimes people send me stories, and I so appreciate it. I get a lot of it. And so sometimes if I don't always respond to you right away, just know that thank you. Thank you for whatever you've sent. A lot of it has come from people that are concerned that we're not getting the full story when it comes to what's happening in the Middle East. And I want to hear all sides of everything. I want as much information as I can because I'm still in that listen and be careful and learn process. Been there for a while now. But yesterday I found this video of Queen Rania of Jordan. And I thought maybe we could listen to it together because I think she makes some really good points. She is a person of Palestinian descent, I believe. And so she comes at this from a perspective that I don't have. Educated woman, lives in this area. And so I found what she had to say pretty compelling. Before we listen to that, I do want to thank Harry for starting us off with the $5 super sticker. Thank you, Harry, so much for your support. You're always really kind. I hope you get to work from home today. I really do. Okay, let's get to it. Because I just I don't know why. Maybe it's because she's so beautiful, or maybe it's because she was educated here in the United States and her life is so interesting. I don't know. For whatever reason, I tend to gravitate toward clicking on stories when I see she's part of them. So Christiane Amanpour, you can see her in the video, is interviewing Queen Rania of Jordan. And let's take a listen.
Arab, as a Palestinian, as a human being, a mother, how you're feeling ever since October 7th?
Well, look, Christian, I cannot begin to describe to you the depth of the grief, the pain, and the shock that we are feeling here in Jordan. All of us are united in this grief, regardless of our origin. We are just can't believe the images that we're seeing every single day coming out of Gaza. We're going to bed seeing those images and waking up to them. You know, I don't know how to, as a mom, we've seen Palestinian mothers who've had to write the names of their children on their hands because the chances of them being shelled to death, of their bodies turning into corpses, are so high. I just want to remind the world that Palestinian mothers love their children just as much as any other mother in the world. And for them to have to go through this is just unbelievable. And equally, I think the people all around the Middle East, including in Jordan, we are just shocked and disappointed by the world's reaction to this catastrophe that is unfolding. In the last couple of weeks, we have seen a glaring double standard in the world. When October 7th happened, the world immediately and unequivocally stood by Israel and its right to defend itself and condemned the attacks that happened. But what we're seeing the last couple of weeks, we're seeing silence in the world. Countries have stopped at just expressing concern or acknowledging the casualties, but always with a preface of declaration of support for Israel. And are we being told that it is wrong to kill a family, an entire family at gunpoint, but it's okay to shell them to death? I mean, there is a glaring double standard here, and it is just shocking to the Arab world. This is the first time in modern history that there is such human suffering, and the world is not even calling for a ceasefire. So the silence is deafening, and to many in our region, it makes the Western world complicit, you know, through their support and through the cover that they give Israel, that it is just its right to defend itself. Many in the Arab world are looking at the Western world as not just tolerating this, but as aiding and abetting it. And this is just horrendous, and it's deeply, deeply disappointing to all of us.
Queen Rania, I'm going to ask you more about this and go deeper into this, you know, into your feelings about this. But first, I want to ask you, you know, the Israelis are shocked to their core, the grief, you know, what happened to them has never happened in that way since the Holocaust. And they are shaken to their core, as I said, and the grief. I just want to get from you what you felt on October 7th.
Well, of course, I was shocked. And, you know, Jordan has made his position very clear. We condemn the killing of any civilian, whether Palestinian or Israeli. That is Jordan's ethical and moral position. And it's also the position of Islam. Islam condemns the killing of civilians. As my husband mentioned recently, the Pact of Omar, which was issued on the gates of Jerusalem 15 centuries ago, that's 1,000 years before the Geneva Conventions, orders Muslims not to kill a woman, child, or elderly person, and not to destroy a tree or hurt a priest. And so this is what we believe are the rules of engagement at time of war, but they need to apply to everybody. So yes, there was the shock and there is the condemnation, but why isn't there equal condemnation to what is happening now? I just want to emphasize that what happened on October, this conflict did not begin on October 7th, although it has been being portrayed as that. You know, most networks are covering the story under the title of Israel at War. But for many Palestinians on the other side of the separation wall, on the other side of the barbed wire, war has never left. This is a 75-year-old story, a story of overwhelming death and displacement to the Palestinian people. It is a story of an occupation under an apartheid regime that occupies land, that demolishes houses, confiscates land, military incursions, night raids. You know, the context of a nuclear-armed regional superpower that occupies, oppresses, and commits daily documented crimes against Palestinians is missing from the narrative.
Okay. So what we heard from her, I think, is a side that we don't get to hear very often in the mainstream media, and that was on CNN. I don't agree with everything she says. I can find common ground with her as a mother, that I don't ever want to see a child hurt. I don't. And I've been seeing too many pictures of little children suffering. So I don't know how you fall, whether you have taken one side or the other. But I think it's important to listen to opinions on all sides. She's very, very strong when it comes to Palestinian. Again, I believe that there are many people in Jordan of Palestinian descent. I don't know if I know that she said that she was grieving for Israelis, but I feel that she also is very angry with them as well. So I don't know if you know, because she has she comes from a particular region in the world, that her opinion is more valid than anyone else's, but I thought it was worth listening to. So there it is. Calvin writes, she doesn't offer any alternatives to Israel other than ceasefire. Leave Israel forever and there's peace. That's a ridiculous position to have, in reality. Sad. What I will say about that, Calvin, she talked about the West being complicit and not asking for a ceasefire, and that's not what I've heard. I've heard President Biden trying to get a ceasefire, and realizing they might not, but trying so that aid could come in and other things happen. They're trying to delay the ground war. I've heard the word ceasefire very much. Kim writes, it's not a mother thing, it's a human thing. 100%. I'm not a mom, but I'm horrified by the suffering of children. Kim C., I completely agree with you. Um, I think because I am a mom, I come at it from that perspective, but you're right, it's more than a mom thing, it's a human being thing. Because even if I didn't have kids, I'd feel the same way as you. So I totally get you. Um, SJ Lola says Jordan is complicit in the victimization of Palestinians. Where were they 75 years ago? I don't think you can look at what's happening and think that Palestinian people who have nothing to do with Hamas haven't been victimized here. And it's true that there's great suffering in this region. Brian writes, as soon as Hamas stops their attacks, the violence will stop. It's as simple as that. Is it though, Brian? And tell me, because I don't know. But it seems like right now at this very moment, even if Hamas did nothing and fired no rockets and put down weapons, Israel still is ready for a ground invasion and still ready to defend itself. And I think this most recent attack is enough for them to say, we're coming in and we're going to try to root out Hamas, or we're going to retaliate. So if today was no attacking from the other side, I tend to think Israel still wants to go in and make a point. Maybe I'm wrong on that. I could be completely wrong on that. I haven't heard what they have said. Have they laid out any demands in order for them to stop the war? I haven't heard that. Ricky Aubert. Hi, Ricky. I hear both sides and I still can't agree with war. Right. This ancient war, with no reason to exist in the religious context, is now in the water, the land, the resources, which will drive the violence. Yeah. It's horrible. It's horrible. And like Queen Rania, every day I wake up and I see the pictures of what has happened. And every day I feel really sad, and I have to actively attempt to make myself look at good things. Otherwise, it would just be depression. I don't think we can look away and ignore it. I think it's important to know what's going on and important to listen to all the different sides. Square says Israel is doing the same shock and awe that led us to Iraq. I don't know if that's the case. If they're, I mean, I don't. When we did shock and awe, we did these air bombings that were relentless, and it may be that that's the same thing that's going on here. I want to think that they're somehow targeted, that they're not just bombing random buildings. Harry also writes, if the Muslim clergy teaches not to kill, why aren't their adherents following their teachings? That's a good question. Vilma says, civilians have been killed in war since the beginnings of time. Sadly, this is nothing new. Hamas hides among its own people. And, oh, shame on me. Stan doesn't like that I played that. Why, Stan? Tell me. Tell me, because I don't want to offend you. And I don't feel ashamed of playing it. Should I feel ashamed of playing it? Because I think it's important to hear different perspectives. Here's the truth of the matter, for me anyway. And I'm so sorry if I offended you, because it wasn't my intent. But can I, as a person, love Israelis, love Jewish people, think they're wonderful, know so many of them, work with so many of them that are talented and kind and lovely and wish for their success in the world. Because I do. Can I have that? But also see other people being hurt, know people from that region of the world, and think they're also kind and lovely and wish good for them as well. Can both things be true? And can I hear all perspectives without being labeled one way or the other? I hope so. I hope so. Because John Rothman and I will sit down and talk about it all. And he's much more knowledgeable than I. So mostly it's me asking him questions and picking his brain over everything. But I just don't feel like I want to accept that I have to not love one group of people, and that means that I can't love the other. Do you know what I mean? I don't want it to say that, because I want to understand the Palestinian perspective, that somehow that it doesn't mean that I don't love Jewish people or don't want to understand their side too. I don't know if that makes any sense. But I do care what you think very much and want to hear what you have to say. So let me scroll down and say, Stan, put on both sides. Yes, I have, though, many times. This is one-sided and very slanted, right? I agree. She does come from a certain perspective. Let's hear from Israelis that are mothers and families that are trying to live in peace. I feel like that's not a perspective that I have been missing, or that we have been missing. I feel like we've heard that, but we haven't heard, at least I have, and I haven't heard this really in the mainstream media, this other perspective. Tell me if I'm wrong on that. Because from the beginning, my heart has been with the Israeli people, not really understanding also what's going on in Gaza. So Phineas writes, as John Rothman continually states, don't confuse people with the facts. Jordan is the original Palestinian homeland. Yeah, it's true. There are many people of Palestinian descent that are living in Jordan that are Jordanian as well. So, okay. Thank you for all your writings on this. Oh, Harry says, offend away. We're all wearing our big boy pants. We aren't, though. And it's a very personal issue for a lot of people. Here's what I don't want is that when you look at a different perspective, or when you express concern for one side or the other, and truly, I have concerns for everyone there in this region that's suffering and being hurt, then all of a sudden, you have taken one side or the other, and that's just not true. That's just not true. You can want to hear all perspectives to educate yourself, I think. Anyway, thank you for the conversation. I appreciate it. And if I offended you by playing what Queen Rania had to say, I apologize, but I think that we are, without that particular perspective, and we have definitely seen the Israeli perspective, and I have played that, and we've interviewed people that have taken that position very strongly. And again, I want to hear it all. I want to know it all. So there we are. All right, let's move on, because something else happened. And this, I think, it's also in the Middle East, and it's what Israel is doing in Gaza. They're dropping leaflets. I don't know if you heard about this, offering rewards for hostage information. And I think it's a good idea if they're trying to get people back and help people that are, again, suffering. And there are hostages that we've seen 4 released so far, but were about 200 taken. And these are people that have to be frightened and scared and going through hell. Israel's military dropped leaflets in Gaza And they are offering protection and a reward to Palestinians who contact them with information about hostages being held by Hamas. And again, as a human being, if you had information, I don't see how you cannot come forward and help. I hope that it's successful and that they save as many lives as of these hostages as possible. And I can't imagine what the people that were taken are going through. I, you know, I don't know where they're kept. I, it's, yeah, I don't know. Um, they're saying that if people take the offer from the Israelis for protection and support and aid in exchange for information, that there may be some type of uncertainty among Hamas supporters, that the people were tearing up these leaflets right away. But the military said in the leaflet, if your will is to live in peace and have a better future for your children, do the humanitarian deed immediately and share verified and valuable information about hostages held in your area. One of the two women that was released in the last couple of days talks about how she was treated and hit with a stick. She does say that when she ended up in Gaza in this underground chamber, that she was treated gently at that time, but when not until she got there. And I can't imagine the not knowing what's going to happen to you. That would be terrifying. So anyway, that's something that's happening in that region as well. There was a study, and I found this in The Guardian, and it's more about American politics to me. But the study shows that nearly 1 in 4 Americans believe political violence may be justified to save the country. It's a national poll. That's a 14th annual American Values Survey done by the nonprofit Public Religion Research Institute, which works in tandem with the Brookings Institution think tank. 1 in 4 Americans believe political violence may be justified to save the country. So I started thinking about, well, what is political violence? The American Revolution, political violence, that many of us would say, well, that was justified, right? January 6th, political violence, unjustified. So how do we get to choose what's justified and what's not justified? If you think your country has been taken over and you want to liberate it, is that justified? I don't know. It seems like an awful lot of people feel like political violence should somehow be warranted. The survey apparently shows 23% of Americans agree that because things have gotten so far off track, true American patriots may have to resort to violence in order to save our country. So that's 24%, up from 15% in 2021. And what it shows is, I think, that as the country becomes more fractured, you see more people starting to think this way. And that's a dangerous direction to go in. When they dig down deeper in this survey, they find support for political violence jumps to higher levels among Americans who believe that the 2020 election was stolen from Donald Trump. That's 46% who say that violence is okay in that instance. 41% held a favorable view of Trump. Americans believe in the so-called replacement theory, 41%. Americans who affirm the core tenet of white Christian nationalism, that God intended America to be a new promised land for European Christians, 39%. So I don't know if they, you happen to find people for the survey that are on the fringe, or if we have an awful lot of people on the fringe, but more people are feeling this way, that violence is okay in pursuit of what they consider to be American ideals. Somehow, somewhere, we veered away from what American ideals really are. And I think my perspective of American ideals is completely different than the people, many of the people that answered the survey. So I just wonder, who gets to choose? Who gets to say when violence is justified? And that's the problem. Let's go to the chat, see what you guys think. Yeah, Eric says what it shows is they're surveying a lot of landline using MAGA heads. That's right. Let's go in. Kim, oh, are you having to defend me from something? I don't know. I hope not, but I understand if you do. Thank you. Oh, Brian. Oh, we're still talking about the Middle East. It's as though the sudden killing of 1,400 Israeli citizens did not happen, and Israel is attacking Hamas for no reason, just to kill Palestinians. What is going on here? Oh, are you feeling like people have forgotten what just happened, and that people have forgotten that hostages were taken, that people were brutally killed? Because I didn't forget that part. I just thought we already knew that part. I think you can want to not have the innocent people in Gaza killed, but also condemn what happened in Israel and know that absolutely that it was a violent, sudden killing of Israeli citizens, and that there is a reason for the violence. So please don't think that I don't understand that happened. And thank you for the comment. I appreciate that. Lori also writing on this topic, if you really want to need to know the history of the area, understand the people. People have lives and can't sit and read one of Rothman's books. Okay. And Phineas writes, if Jordan truly wants peace, they would welcome all the Palestinians back and let them share their country. Jordan is much larger than Israel with more land mass. Jammer DC, if you're not hearing about what's happening to the Israelis, then you're not paying much attention. It's good to hear other perspectives. You don't have to agree, but it's good to hear it. That's kind of how I feel. But it's interesting when you hear another perspective or play another's perspective, you're labeled as someone who doesn't support Israel, which couldn't even be further from the truth, honestly. So, Queen Rania sure minimized the horrific slaughter of people of many nations. I heard her say, and maybe she said it because she felt like she had to say it, I don't know. But I heard her say that she doesn't want any killing. And that's kind of where I line up with her, is I don't want anyone to be hurt. SF Tesla writes, oh, you're talking about the whole radio and the posts and what's acceptable and what's not. I agree. Okay, let's move to the speaker drama in the House. Boy, this is going back and forth. It seems like no matter what, a new day, a new speaker nominee. So now we've got this person, Mike Johnston, who's making a bid for the House speakership. I don't think he's going to get the votes needed, but maybe. The last guy was in and out, right? At one moment he's the speaker nominee, and then they take a floor vote and he's out and he's gone. I don't know. And this is very interesting because Republicans don't necessarily want to face what has happened in the recent past, it seems. And when trying to defend Mr. Johnson, they were fielding questions from reporters. And I think it was a reporter from ABC who lobbed a question about being an election denier. Valid question, I think. Want to know who the Speaker of the House is, what they think about things, right? And they didn't want that question asked. They don't want to remember what happened in the recent past. They just want to forget about it and go on with what's happening now. So let me share this with you, if I can. It's very interesting, I think, the reaction. And I don't think it's reasonable. I think it's important for us to understand who it is that the Republicans are considering. And it's okay for us to, again, the same thing. It's okay for us to need more information. Check out this reaction. I'm telling you.
Next question. Next question.
Really? So he's asked about denying what the results of the election being part of the Great Lie, and is shouted down by all the Republicans behind him, told to shut up. The reporter told to shut up. They don't want that question. As if being an election denier isn't somehow an important part of who this person is, and we should just look away and move on. That tells you what we're dealing with here, I think. Honestly. It's very, very, very surprising. Square talking about David K. Johnston yesterday saying anyone can run for speaker. Trump has heard it, as a matter of fact. Remember he said, "Oh, I'll be the temporary speaker." No. I don't know exactly what you guys are talking about, but I wish I could help you. Something about turning off admin channels, turning things off. I don't know. Anyway, I thought that was a very interesting reaction from Republicans that are that are upset that people want to know who the speaker would be, what the speaker believes in. I guess we're just not supposed to focus on that at all, right? Nothing to see here. Move along. Nothing helped. Nothing happened. Yeah, interesting. But speaking of what's happening with that, Nancy Pelosi was also on one of these news channels being interviewed, talking about what's going on with the Republican Party. She was speaking with MSNBC, is what happened. And she was saying that they don't believe in governance. And I don't know if that's necessarily true. But what she's saying is they want this break in the action. They don't want the business of the American people to move forward. So for her, what she's saying is, this is exactly, we're playing into exactly what they want here. I guess I hadn't considered that perspective. I just thought that they couldn't get it together. And that's, I thought, was embarrassing to them. Not that they actually didn't want to get it together, and that they're trying to make it so that the people's business doesn't get done. That's a surprise to me. Here's what Nancy has to say.
For more than 35 years. She is, of course, former Democratic Speaker of the House, led the House Democratic Caucus for 20 years, and Speaker Emerita Pelosi joins me now. It's great to have you here. I guess my first question to you, as someone who has started in politics from the time you were a child with your father as the mayor of Baltimore and know politics very well, are you surprised it has gotten this bad over there and it's gone this long?
Well, first, may I thank you for the opportunity to spend some time with you. what I learned in Baltimore from my father was how to count votes. That's always really important. And that seems to be something that is lacking on the other side of the aisle. Am I surprised? I'm rarely surprised in politics, but I do think that it is surprising that the Republicans do not honor the oath of office to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States, to honor the institution in which we serve, and to respect the obligation that we have to the American people to get the job done for them. And so whatever differences we may have, and we all have our differences in politics within our party, vis-a-vis the other party and the rest, at some point you have to come to a decision as to how you're going to get the job done. You weigh the equities. I care about this, I care about that, but do I care about the American people the most? Do I care about my oath of office? Do I respect the institution in which I serve? That should outweigh any of the other differences that we all have within our parties or within the Congress.
I want to follow up on that, a little bit of shop talk from someone who is, I think, widely seen across the ideological spectrum by observers as one of the most effective legislative leaders of our time. When you talked about, you heard Saul Hill maybe talking about the sort of resentments that have built up, right? People are mad. These sort of, after each round, there's some new faction.
Okay.
How do you go about, on the Democratic side, where there is, I think, more of a shared governing vision, like stitching those factions together? What is your approach? What would be an approach of a leader who rises to the occasion to try to, like, get people over that sense of feeling angry or hurt or snubbed?
I would say one word which would define it all: respect. Respect, which leads you to build consensus, to come to a place where people weigh the equities and, as I said before, come to a conclusion that for this vote at this time, this is the right thing for our country. I also accept any compliment on behalf of my House Democrats who had the courage to make some of the difficult decisions that are needed to come to consensus on a particular vote and live to have another debate another day, but not try to win every fight every day. Pick your fights carefully, respect your caucus, and build consensus. By the way, I was down to 2 votes. I was down to 2. I was down to 2.
Yes, and we never saw anything like this, as many people have remarked upon. One of the things that happened today, which seems to me part of this, frankly, I find sort of entertaining because it's just it's sort of funny to watch them. But something that's sort of darker to me is the fact that Tom Emmer's vote to certify the election, and any vote to certify the election to uphold, as Jamie Raskin often puts it, the constitutional republic, is clearly a red line for Donald Trump personally and the MAGA faction. And I wonder what you think the implications are for the country and for the House if that is the case, if that is a disqualifying vote.
Well, let's just look at today. Today you had the former president of the United States in court, his chief, as he called himself in his book, Meadows, Mark Meadows, saying that he told the president that he was wrong about the election. At least that's what's represented in the press. The president's in court. The president's chief is getting immunity for what he has to say about what the president knew about the election. And you have the Republicans in Congress listening to a president in court whose own chief of staff is saying he was wrong, and they're using that as the basis on how they go forward. What I gained from that, what I learned from that is, to the Republicans in America, take back your party, the grand old party, a great party that made such a contribution to our country, with great leadership in so many ways. Again, who am I to be advocating for a strong Republican Party? But it's what our country needs, in addition to a strong Democratic Party, whatever other party that people put out there. But not to have a cult, to really effectively a thug, as the manifestation of the Republican Party now. The same day he's in court, his chief of staff asked for immunity.
Yeah, so that's Nancy Pelosi and what she has to say with Chris Hayes on MSNBC. I thought that was very well said. And what's interesting is she's advocating for a strong Republican Party. This is Nancy Pelosi. It's fascinating to me that she doesn't want to see their party fall apart because she knows what it means for the American people. Part of her has to be chuckling, like, I can't believe you guys can't pull this off. I can't believe you guys can't get this together, right? How many years did I do this and everything was okay? And now look, you guys can't do it at all. It's fascinating, though, that even though she's diametrically opposed to so many of the tenets that Republicans believe in, she wants success for America and wants them to get it together. So, one of the things she did say later in that interview is that she feels like they're doing this on purpose, that they're stalling the business of the American people because they don't want it to move forward. They want to crash the ship. They want to hit the iceberg. So, Brian says Pelosi is brilliant and always has been. Smart. I mean, you think about having to keep that many people in line and unified for that long. Somebody needs to take lessons. Oh, you guys are still talking about the Middle East. Yeah, it's rough. It's rough to hear how the violence and the death. It's a hard one, and I don't know. All I know is that I really don't appreciate being told that because I have sympathy for Palestinians, it means that somehow my allegiance isn't with Israel. Because that's not true. I can want everyone to not be attacked and to be able to live in peace. But I can also want to hear different perspectives and feel like that's okay. That's where I land on that. Vilma says Trump will change our democracy to his own advantage forever. If you think otherwise, it's delusional. Yeah, he's just very selfish. But Nancy Pelosi brought up this whole Mark Meadows flipping situation, so let's get into that. This is fascinating to me, and it might be different than all the lawyers that are flip-flopping as well. So we have Kenneth Chesebro, then we have Sidney Powell, then we had Jenna Ellis yesterday, and also yesterday we heard Mark Meadows is now getting immunity to testify for the special counsel in the federal election subversion investigation in Washington, D.C., the federal case. I mean, this is a guy that knows where all the bodies are buried, right? This is a guy, I guess I'm not surprised that he would flip to save his own skin. But it seems like he was, as they say, hip deep in all of this. To give him immunity is a pretty big deal, which means that what he has to say, and I think he's been given testimony, interviewed by the special counsel at least 3 times, what he has to say must be a jaw dropper. Meadows telling investigators originally he didn't believe the election was stolen and that Trump was being dishonest in claiming victory shortly after the polls closed in 2020. And he said he told the president that, right? The former president. We don't know exactly what the deal that Meadows got is. We do know he's getting immunity. And most often it means you have to fully cooperate, which means you have to spill all the details, everything, under oath. Trump is freaking out. And I can understand why. Because all of these people that were pretty high up in his circle are now, turning state's evidence, basically. Here's what the quote attributed to Trump is that he posted on his social media platform. Mark Meadows never, in caps, never told me that allegations of significant fraud about the rigged election were baseless. He certainly didn't say that in his book. He's not happy. He has to know that all these people turning against him, which in his world is like being disloyal is the worst thing you can do to him. He wants everyone to fall on their swords. Take it, take one for Trump. It's fascinating. It's really fascinating. Meadows apparently was asked about Trump's reaction to the January 6th riot at the Capitol. And that reporting from ABC. Meadows corroborated accounts that Trump was hesitant to call on his supporters to stop acting violently, at one point even telling then House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy, "I guess people are more upset than you are." Is it what we've hoped for? Is this when Trump gets taken down? Is this when he finally, in his lifetime of likely doing things that were not on the up and up, finally faces the music and is held accountable? Is this that moment? I mean, I don't feel bad for him. And I'm not sorry, given what he's done to America. But I understand that he is now feeling the heat on this, and he is not pleased. He is, he's feeling stress. What he said again about Mark Meadows, some people would make that deal, but they are weaklings and cowards, and so bad for the future of our failing nation. I don't think that Mark Meadows is one of them, but who really knows? Make America great again. Right. He's trying to paint himself as a political prisoner, right? Comparing himself to Nelson Mandela and Jesus. But from what I understand, maybe even more so than the trio of lawyers flipping, is that Mark Meadows flipping is incredibly significant. The information he has about the plans and strategies to get that election overturned, to cheat the American people, and to steal the presidency, he was in a very significant position to know everything. So, again, we don't know exactly what his deal is. We do know that Mark Meadows has immunity, and I'm not sure how I feel about that, because these people are cheaters. The lawyers that have turned, the chief of staff, Mark Meadows, these people played an active role in trying to steal the presidency from you and I, because that's our voice, our vote. He's not going to face any charges, gets immunity. And I hope it's worth it. And I do think that former President Trump knows this is a bad one. To have Meadows turn like this is dangerous for him. So, I don't know. What do you think about this? Are you watching it eating popcorn? Are you watching it feeling sad for America? Vilma says Trump will change our democracy. Yeah, that's true. Sorry, I already put that up there, Vilma. Talking about Trump being the speaker. Yeah, no, I don't think that's going to happen. I mean, never say never, right? But I don't know. Jennifer writes, "Hey, Trump, that's what it feels like to be abandoned. You can ask Rudy Giuliani." That's the truth. Doug says, "I'm sure someone read the book and explained it to Trump so he doesn't freak out." I don't know. Trump was stoking the fire, but it fizzled. Hope Mark Meadows has good security, right? Because the minute you flip or you start telling the truth, they come after you, right? Debbie says she's still talking stolen election. Are you talking about Nancy Pelosi? Yeah. Meadows is the man. The third nail in the coffin. Fourth, I think, at least at this point, right? Chesbrough, Powell, Ellis, and now Meadows. So yeah, at least four. And I get that the other three were turned in the Georgia state case, and Meadows is in the federal case, but still, I'm telling you. Debbie says she saw where Sidney Powell is yapping about being extorted by prosecutors. Huh. Well, I don't know if she can say those things as part of her plea deal. She's better be careful. Good morning, Deidre. She says, I hate it when Trump says our nation is failing. He says that to his base, that he's the only one that can bring it back from the brink. Yes, he's the only one. Yeah. Debbie, gotcha. Yeah, Powell. I heard what you're saying. That's what happens when I just click on one without reading the context. Sherry says, according to the House rules, anyone indicted for a felony cannot be the speaker. Amy says Meadows only has limited immunity for his testimony earlier this year. They want that information, though, Amy. 3 times he's been interviewed. So, speaking of lying about elections and otherwise, George Santos is back in the news. Real doozy this time. But before we get to that, let's do a little bit of news, if we could. And then we'll come back to some other stories that I've ready for you as well.
Now, from around the world to up your street, the Nikki Maduro Show presents News Czar Kim McAllister.
Yes, yes, yes. Good morning, everybody. Let's get to a little bit of news here on the Nikki Maduro Show. House Republican leaders hopeful that their conference can unite and elect Louisiana Congressman Mike Johnston to be the next speaker today. Former Speaker Kevin McCarthy this morning calling Johnston a fighter and a principled conservative who has his full support. Majority Leader Steve Scalise and Majority Whip Tom Emmer also endorsed Johnston hours before a full vote on the floor. Johnston clinching the nomination from his party last night, hours after Emmer dropped out of the race. The House has been without a leader now for more than 3 weeks after McCarthy was pushed out by a group of conservatives. Israeli military forces ramped up bombing in southern Gaza overnight as world leaders are calling for a halt in fighting to allow more aid to come into the Palestinian areas. The U.S. and Russia are leading international cause for a pause in fighting so aid can reach Palestinian civilians. And when we watched Queen Rania earlier in the broadcast, that is not what she said. She's not listening to that other countries are calling for a ceasefire on this. Meanwhile, the Israeli Defense Forces said its jets hit Syrian army infrastructure and mortar launchers in response to rocket attacks on Israel. Israeli officials said they also conducted airstrikes in the West Bank region, while Palestinian officials said 3 people died in the bombings there. So that is the latest. Meanwhile, here in the United States, anti-Semitic incidents are on the rise, sadly. Reported anti-Semitic incidents in the U.S. have spiked nearly 400% in the 2 weeks since the war broke out between Israel and the Palestinian militant group Hamas. That according to the Anti-Defamation League, which tracked about 312 separate incidents. About 190 of those were directly related to the Middle East conflict. People are so angry they're willing to go out and take action. This is crazy. The group noted cases of assault, violent threats, and rallies showing what they called implicit support for Hamas and/or violence against Jews in Israel. No. I mean, no. And listen, I support your right to speak, but I don't support your right to speak and call for what I believe is one of the tenets of Hamas, which is the killing of all people of Jewish descent. I don't know how anyone can think that's acceptable or okay. So hold your rallies, be respectful of other people and what they believe in and their right to live. And don't hurt people. I mean, how you could see what's happening in the Middle East and be upset about the violence and have that cause a violent reaction within yourself is a leap that I just don't understand. Airbnb is using AI technology to get a handle on Halloween parties. Short-term rental platform Airbnb using artificial intelligence technology to help put a stop to these Halloween parties. Company officials say bookings that are made for this weekend are now being analyzed to check for risk factors like the length of stay and the distance from the rental user's address. So if I've rented an Airbnb in the same town in which I live, the chances are good that's my Halloween party spot, right? If the AI system finds a booking might be problematic, it will not allow the reservation to go through. Airbnb banned parties from its platform in 2020. Remember that Halloween party? I think it was in Orinda, where violence broke out and at least one person was killed. Some users have still managed to book short-term rentals for parties, like the one in East Nashville last Halloween, where a 14-year-old was injured by gunfire. So yeah, Airbnb has to, I agree with what they're doing, cracking down on this. And if AI helps them figure out who's renting in places that don't make sense that you would want to rent, that it would most likely be for a party or a gathering, so be it. Governor Gavin Newsom overseas. He is on his third day in China. He met with the country's president to talk about the climate crisis. That feels awfully presidential. He says it's the only way to solve it is to continue working together as two of the world's largest economies. Governor Newsom saying despite major differences, California and China share in the desire to feel protected, connected, and respected. He also discussed how to bring back tourism and increase flights to California as well. Something else AI is being used for is wildfire detection. A big honor for California's effort to stop wildfires before they spread. Time magazine is calling the use of artificial intelligence one of the best inventions of the year. The system uses more than 1,000 cameras throughout the state to spot flames, allowing crews to respond faster. In the past 4 months, AI has detected 77 wildfires before any 911 calls even came in. I don't want to jinx us. It's still October, and anything can happen. So knock on all the wood in this office, and there's a lot of it. But this looks like something that seems to be working. Right? Well done. You know that mural of Kobe Bryant and his daughter Gianna? It's in downtown Los Angeles, and they were going to take it down, the people that own the building where it is. I had a picture of it. It's actually really a cool mural. And there were a lot of people outraged that this mural that so many people hold dear was going to be just taken down without any fanfare, just strip it and let it go. Well, now it's going to stay. The NBA 2K video game franchise has reached an agreement with the owner of the building that mural is painted on. The 1-year extension will keep the mural from being painted over and replaced with advertising. Bryant's widow, Vanessa, recently joined the fight to save the mural, which is just a few blocks away from Crypto.com Arena. It's good. I mean, it's good. It's a beautiful mural. I would have been sad to see it go. So I'm glad that it's gotten a 1-year reprieve. Something big happening in Disneyland. Pixar-themed hotel is going to open in January. Disneyland fans marking another date on their calendar. The Southern California park planning to open its Pixar Place Hotel on January 30th, replacing the Paradise Pier Hotel. This features some of the Pixar's biggest movies in the rooms like Toy Story and The Incredibles. Guests can also expect some never-before-seen artwork. I was looking at pictures last night, and they have their pool area is a Finding Nemo theme, so it's kind of cool. If you're somebody that enjoys staying at Disney properties, that's a great thing for you. Still expensive though. It's not cheap to stay there. And we talked about this yesterday, this APEC summit. San Francisco is still preparing for next month's APEC summit. The Sky Star observation wheel in Golden Gate Park closed last Sunday in preparation to move it to Fisherman's Wharf, where it will open November 10th. The opening comes one day before the Asia Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit kicks off for a week in the city of San Francisco. San Francisco also looking to crack down on the number of hot dog vendors in the area of the summit. They are working to get homeless people out of that area into shelters. What does it take to get the homeless people off the streets? All the world leaders coming to town for the APEC summit. Got to clean this place up in a real hurry. Yeah. In San Jose, an affordable housing project moving forward. The city council approving the issuance of $9 million in tax-exempt housing bonds to raise money for this development. The 64 residence affordable housing building could start construction by the end of the year. It would be located at the site of Kirk's Steakburgers restaurant. It's unclear where or if that restaurant plans to move somewhere else. So... First Fridays in Oakland. God, that used to be a really big thing. Remember that? Well, they won't be taking place at the start of 2024. They were scheduled to, but they're not going to. And that is because of financial issues. Organizers of this community event say they have to temporarily close First Fridays in 2024 from January to March because of financial constraints. First Fridays has been a place for local artists to showcase their work. Organizers say they're sad that the effort to connect the community through art and culture will have to shutter for the time being. They're trying to find more funding to allow this program to restart, but as of now, that's the way it goes. So First Fridays is out in Oakland. I wanted to tell you this other story about diced onions. Have you heard there's a lot of people getting sick? 73 people sick after a salmonella outbreak in multiple states linked to a diced onion project that was made here in California. The CDC said there have been 15 hospitalizations in 22 states. They've issued a food safety alert for the Gills Onions product. The company also issued a voluntary recall. This product includes certain lots of diced yellow onions, diced celery and onions, and diced mirepoix and diced red onions. So yeah, watch your onion consumption right now. I guess some people getting sick. There is a Wisconsin Noodle and Company offering a $2 mac and cheese special after a deer crashed through the window and ran through the restaurant. This happened in Beloit, Wisconsin. The store manager said they were in the middle of the lunch rush. They had 65 kids eating a meal while trick-or-treating when the deer rushed through. The kids apparently went out the side doors while this buck came into the dining room and ran through the kitchen, exited through the back door. The restaurant said no one, including the deer, was hurt in this, but they're now offering this promotion in light of the event for customers who want to save some dough, D-O-E, and they're calling it a $2 mac and cheese special. So that's what's happening in Wisconsin. All right. Thank you for bearing with me on that. Let's talk about George Santos. I think he's got a problem. At first, I thought he was just lying about things that benefited himself, right? Lying about his family background, his education, things he's done in life so that voters would like him more. I think he's kind of a compulsive liar. Here he goes again. They're calling him the Long Island liar, George Santos. Caught again after claiming his 5-year-old niece was kidnapped by Chinese communists in New York. Police say, no, that's all made up. No. They found no evidence, the police, of any abduction attempt, and say, I'd lean into he made it up. Why? See, this is like, you're a compulsive liar, just making up stories just because. He's already facing 23 criminal counts of fraud. the New York congressman, George Santos. He says, this is a familiar refrain, right? I'm the victim of a witch hunt. Sure you are. He called a journalist and said his niece had been targeted. Maybe because he says he's been receiving death threats as well. I don't know. Santos said the little girl was found after surveillance camera footage located her with 2 Chinese men. His 5-year-old niece, he says, was kidnapped by Chinese communists. Police are like, yeah, never happened. Nope. Here's the thing. Even if it did happen, no one's going to believe you anymore. This is the boy who cried wolf scenario. Unless the police can find any evidence, and they can't, then it's most logical conclusion is that George Santos is lying again. Santos says he thinks the kidnapping of his niece is related to his harsh line against the Chinese Communist Party. He said, listen, I don't want to go into conspiracy theory, but if the shoe fits. The police say we found nothing at all to suggest that this is true. And it's very likely that he made it up. And on it goes. And now it's not clear to me whether he does this type of thing for attention or just because he can't help it. Kind of sad for that. Long Island Lion Santos. All right. Interesting doings in New Hampshire. I don't know if you've been following the primary situation. What's happening there? The 2024 New Hampshire Democratic primary ballot will not have President Joe Biden's name on it. The Democratic Party is holding this vote, this primary vote, in defiance of a revamped primary order that the White House has gotten behind, but New Hampshire has not. It used to be that New Hampshire had the nation's first opening primary, so all eyes were on New Hampshire. But it moved. And now South Carolina is going to go first, from what I understand. And so New Hampshire has said, wait a minute, no. And so they're holding this unsanctioned primary. Now, President Biden says his name will be on the presidential ballot in 2024, even if it's not on this primary ballot. Yeah. The folks in New Hampshire say the reality is Joe Biden will win the New Hampshire first in the nation primary in January, win renomination in Chicago, and will be reelected next November. President Biden isn't the first sitting president not to show up on New Hampshire's primary ballot, though. I guess Lyndon B. Johnson didn't file for the state's primary. He still won through write-in. And that's what they're saying is people should write in Joe Biden's name, Democrats, on this primary. It's interesting. I hadn't been paying attention to what was going on there, and I thought it was noteworthy. Something else we talked about yesterday that I kind of want to circle back to is this incident with the pilot from the East Bay who was undergoing a mental crisis, a breakdown. And I mentioned this yesterday, but he said he thought he was dreaming. He says he had taken psychedelic mushrooms within the 2 days before this incident, that he hadn't slept in 40 hours, that he thought he was having a nervous breakdown, and he thought he was dreaming. And so there he is in the jump seat, and one of the third seat in the cockpit, and he just loses it and tries to shut off the engine mid-flight, apparently. He's now facing 83 counts of attempted murder. And I don't know. I mean, I guess they say you can have a bad trip on mushrooms. It seemed like he had taken them previously and within enough time that he wouldn't be still, feeling the effects. But I guess depends on how much you take and how it affects you. So he appeared in court with his attorney yesterday, pleaded not guilty to 83 counts of attempted murder for trying to take down that plane. I wonder if it'll be a not guilty by reason of a mental defect or insanity. It's interesting because we've heard recently that psilocybin, magic mushrooms, can be used to treat depression or PTSD. That it's a breakthrough therapy. That didn't do so well for this guy, I guess. He's under arrest in Washington State, but he's from the Bay Area. And I understand as well that other information came out yesterday saying that he also tried to open a door as well. And he told the flight attendants, you need to zip tie me to the seat because I'm not in my right mind. Interesting. He said, I pulled both the emergency shut-off handles trying to turn off the engines because I thought I was dreaming and I just want to wake up. Wow. He says he's been suffering from depression for a while now. And so I don't know if it has to do with the depression or if it has more to do with the magic mushrooms or if he just had a mental break and the mushrooms had nothing to do with it. But it's interesting, and people that know him are very surprised. Lost for words, they say. It could not have been him, but it was, allegedly, him. Speaking of drugs, let's move to this house in the South Bay. It's one of those examples of what has happened to our housing market. This is wild. There is a San Jose house with a meth lab. It has signs saying this house is condemned and dangerous. It's got a chain link fence and warning signs reading condemned. The home is currently too unsafe to occupy. This house is going for $1.5 million. Someone is going to spend $1.5 million on a house in San Jose that is unsafe to live in, has a meth lab, and is condemned. Yeah. It has an inactive meth lab and meth. Well, I hope it doesn't still have the meth. But Keller Williams Realty listing the home for $1,550,000. They say it's a great opportunity to own a large home. Great location to freeway and expressway. Home has inactive meth lab and meth. Is what they say on the real estate ad. The owner of this home, Peter Karasev, arrested in March for keeping explosive materials, guns, and narcotics inside. Highly explosive bomb-making chemicals. He lived in this home on Potomac Court with his, sadly, 3 young children and his wife. Not a safe place for those kids to be. Police say they found chemicals, drugs, firearms within very easy reach of the children. Not a safe environment for the kids or for anyone else. And so, yeah. The property's listing description says the home will be transferred to a new buyer in its current state. So for $1.5 million, you get a house that you have to go into, suited up in all your hazmat gear, hoping it doesn't blow, I guess. Hopefully the bomb squad came in and rendered it somewhat safe. And you've got to gut it and take all this stuff out. This is crazy. The real estate agent saying even though it's a seller's market, if they do actually get the $1.5 million they're asking for, it's a home run. And some real estate agents are saying, I'd be really surprised if they get that much money. Getting this house to a safe, livable state means someone has to come in and rip out the flooring, the sheetrock, the insulation, $200,000 to $300,000 to bring this home back to where it needs to be. It's big. It's got 6 bedrooms and 4 bathrooms, 600,000 square foot lot. It's in a neighborhood with a good school. 1.5 million plus 300,000 in repairs. Yeah. Interesting. This is what we've come to in the South Bay. This is wild. Nice neighborhood, though. 1.5 mil. Another crime story I thought was interesting. This one in Martinez. You know those little, not a full-blown ice cream truck, but like a little cart that attaches to the back of a bicycle and people will drive around and sell ice cream? Well, this ice cream vendor also was selling cocaine, apparently, according to police. Would you like an It's It, or would you like drugs? Whatever you want. We're selling it all. This person, 3 North Bay Street vendors were arrested in June for allegedly selling cocaine near an elementary school. This just announced in a press release this week. The detectives from the narcotics unit launched an investigation into this man they suspect of dealing cocaine on West 9th Street near Abraham Lincoln Elementary School. I'm sorry, I said Martinez. This happened in Santa Rosa. So this man is riding a tricycle with his products in various containers and selling both legal and illegal products to people on this street. He's busted by an undercover detective who bought a gram of cocaine. 2 other suspects also identified in connection with this. Just like, really selling some ice cream? Wild. Here's another crime story that, this one, I have to say, not the best and brightest. This one, this story out of Livermore. A Redwood City man allegedly tried to rob a Livermore gun store. Tried to rob a gun store. First mistake. And he did it with a hammer. You tried to rob a gun store with a hammer? I don't think that's going to work out very well. And it didn't. This man, who reportedly tried to rob a Livermore gun store while armed with a hammer, was shot and killed by the shop's owner Sunday afternoon. Livermore police called to East Bay Firearms on 1st Street, where they found this 28-year-old Redwood City man who'd been shot at least one time and died at the scene there. The man was wearing a mask, a hooded sweatshirt, and gloves when he allegedly attempted to rob the gun store by taking a firearm while armed with a hammer. Police say the store owner appears to have acted in self-defense and is not suspected of committing a crime here. There were 5 other people inside the store at that time. They were not hurt. Only the person apparently who was there trying to take guns armed with a hammer. Now, I don't want anyone to be killed or hurt, as we discussed earlier in the show. But it's hard for me to feel, I mean, again, I don't want anyone to die, but it's hard for me to feel sympathy here. You know, this is kind of one of those Darwin Awards. You're robbing a gun store, first of all. Second of all, you're robbing a gun store with a hammer? Yeah. Again, that out of Livermore. One of those stories that it leaves you scratching your head. Don't get it. There's a story, every year they do a survey of where the cities are, or which cities have the biggest rat infestation. They call it the Rattiest Cities Report. And it's commissioned by Orkin, the pest control company. And so the annual list has been released of America's rattiest cities. And there's some California cities high on the list. Los Angeles in the number 2 spot this time. Chicago, number 1 for the 9th consecutive year. San Francisco, number 5. There have been times where I've been in San Francisco waiting at a stoplight. I used to work in the evenings, and I'd be at a stoplight at 10th and Market, and I'd look over and see all this movement and see just this whole area next to a building teeming with rats. So gross. That's like roll up the window and lock the door. They're coming to get you. San Francisco, number 5 in the rattiest city survey. San Diego, number 28. Sacramento was 33rd. Orkin says the rankings are not based on the number of rats in any city or any official count, but are instead drawn from the number of new rodent services, meaning how often that they are being called in to deal with a rat infestation. When left unattended, we know rodents multiply very swiftly, causing damage to homes and yards. Rats are capable of squeezing into spaces through small holes, as small as a quarter, which makes it especially important to seal cracks from the outside. There are a lot of businesses in Los Angeles, which, again, number 2 in the rattiest city report, claiming that infestation of rats is hurting their livelihood. They have videos showing rodents crawling along streets, sidewalks, under vendor stands, scavenging for food. So here's the official rattiest city report list. It's Chicago, number 1, Los Angeles, number 2, New York, number 3, Washington, D.C. is number 4, San Francisco, 5, Philadelphia, 6, Baltimore, 7, Denver, 8, Detroit, 9, and Cleveland, Akron, number 10. Looking for other California cities. Yeah. Portland took 26. San Diego, 28. Sacramento, 33. So that's what it looks like. Ugh. They're offering colorful t-shirts to the people of Chicago for winning this one. I don't know if my city is the rattiest city, if I'm the person who is really looking to advertise that fact, right? We're the rattiest city. Yeah, no, I don't think so. No, thank you. That's not where my head is. So there is right now, as we speak, and we talked a little bit about the House speakership and what's going on there, a House speaker vote underway right at this moment. First round of voting with Representative Mike Johnston as speaker nominee. At this point, 143 for Johnson, 116 for Jeffries, 0 for others. So it looks like fairly unified at this point, but it's still early in the process. Again, the House is voting on the speakership bid of Representative Mike Johnston from Louisiana, the 4th speaker nominee after Representative Tom Emmer dropped out. And what we do know, again, is that Johnston has been a vocal supporter of Trump. He was a key congressional figure in the failed efforts to overturn the 2020 election. And we could very well have him as our next speaker. I mean, let it sink in for a moment. This is who, would be a heartbeat away from the presidency. It's an important job. And, it's scary who's being considered for it. I don't want these people who hurt the country to have anything to do with it. So, we know that the Republican-controlled House has been without a speaker for 3 weeks. They need to do something, but I'm not going to be sad if Johnson doesn't win this one. So, yeah. Here's another story that's interesting. President Biden says the United States is expanding its alliance with Australia. During a bilateral meeting in the Oval Office with the Australian Prime Minister today, the president said the two countries are working to ensure the Indo-Pacific region remains free as China exerts its military power. The two leaders are expected to discuss conflicts in Israel and Ukraine as well. So, interesting. Back to Trump. former president's civil fraud trial is back underway in New York City. Of course, Cohen, that's the one we didn't mention earlier, who is testifying. He got on the stand yesterday, and, he wasn't holding anything back. Trump accused of inflating the value of his and his business's assets in order to get more favorable loans. Yesterday, former Trump attorney and so-called fixer Michael Cohen came face to face with Trump once again as he gave testimony against his former boss. And I was reading a story saying that Trump's face was getting really red. He was getting worked up in the courtroom there. So, time to face the music. There's a hurricane headed for Mexico. Have you guys heard about Hurricane Otis? It's devastating damage they think might happen along the coast after Hurricane Otis making landfall near Acapulco as a Category 5 storm. The National Hurricane Center says the center of the storm hit the coast of South Mexico right after midnight, sustained winds of 165 miles per hour. Otis is expected to weaken as it moves over the mountains. So, yeah, some damage going on there. Hope everybody's okay. There is a case about a justice of the peace who won't marry same-sex couples that will be heard by the Texas Supreme Court today. This federal law protects same-sex marriages signed last year by President Biden, but Justice Diane Hensley of Waco is saying no thank you, and she has turned away gay couples because of her religious beliefs. Hensley was reprimanded by the State Judicial Conduct Commission in 2019 and claimed they were violating her religious freedoms. Question. We had recently this Supreme Court case where your right to deny someone's service was upheld. So if you have a certain religious belief, that it's somehow okay for you then to not offer your services to gay couples. But this particular person is a judge, right? A justice of the peace who's employed by the state of Texas and therefore has to follow all the laws of the state. The laws of the state are that a couple can get married and it doesn't matter what gender they are. I don't know, with the way the courts they are right now, I wonder if her religious right to be a bigot is going to be upheld. Now, she's been reprimanded by the State Judicial Conduct Commission, but this case is going to the Texas Supreme Court. I don't know, maybe I'll have to, come back and apologize to the folks in Texas. I don't have a lot of faith, I guess, in this one. I don't think you get to do that. If you can't follow the laws of the state, then you can't be the judge. Because your job is about following the law. Your job is not about your religion. Now, if you want to be a church that doesn't marry same-sex couples, I think that's your private church area. You can do that. But if you're working for the state government, that doesn't seem right to me. I don't like that at all. So I hope the state Supreme Court in Texas comes down with a pretty swift decision against this woman for doing this. Can you imagine going to the justice of the peace and being told, no, I don't believe in your marriage, so I'm just not going to do it? A state employee? I'm sure gay people have many more stories than that. Like, Kim, you can't believe that? Listen to what happened to me over here. I know I come at it as from a place of just being surprised that in this day and age that could actually happen. It's shocking to me. So I don't know. I hope that that this person is taken off the bench, disrobed, as they say. Yeah, Beth says Texas courts are so liberal. Eric says, I have very little faith in the judicial system in general. Truth. Eric also writes, yeah, legalize discrimination. Deidre says Waco is a deeply religious area. I don't think just because people are religious that they get to discriminate if they're working in state government positions. No. 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 And so, yeah, I hope that's dealt with very quickly. But again, it's Texas, and you never know what's going to happen with that. But a girl can hope, right? I'm going to tell you about a different story before we head out and head over to the Mark Thompson show. And that is that the Chicago Police Department is now investigating allegations that more than 24 current and former officers have ties to anti-government extremist groups. This report by the Chicago Sun-Times revealed at least 27 Chicago police officers appeared in leak rosters for the Oath Keepers. These are people with badges and guns. This is the group that, went to the Capitol and I think committed some pretty big crimes. Now we find out 27 Chicago police officers are affiliated. I'm sure there are police officers all over the place affiliated with this group. What a disappointment. Man. In the Hollywood labor negotiations strike, there are negotiations underway. The big studios and Hollywood actors set to meet today again to talk. SAG-AFTRA telling union members in an email yesterday that came out that the studio CEOs came back to the table after more than 100 days of this actor strike and that the talks are scheduled to continue. So maybe we'll get some movement there as well. And we know that the United Auto Workers strike is still underway and is expanding as well. So a couple of work actions to be following. There are some people that I would love to thank. Pamela, $5. Excellent perspective on the show today. Thank you for your kind words. It's always better when there's two of us able to talk about things, but I really appreciate all of the way that you guys participate in the conversation as well. It really means a lot to me, whether you disagree with me or whether you don't. I know I didn't make Stan happy today, and I really apologize for that because my intent was not to offend anyone. My intent was to hear all sides and perspectives. So if I've offended, I'm sorry, but thank you for the conversation, and thank you for the honest comment from Stan and from everyone else. And thank you, Pamela, for the $5 super sticker. Mike Hendricks for $5. Thank you, Mike. Much appreciated. Thank you. And Harry coming through with a $5 to start off the show. You can find The Nikki Maduro Show online, of course, at thenikkimaduroshow.com, thenikkimaduroshow.com. And if you could click the thumbs up button, we really appreciate all the support that you give us here on The Nikki Maduro Show. Now, Nikki will be back tomorrow. She's working for the city today, but she'll be back tomorrow. So tomorrow and Friday will be as normal here on the show. Thank you for being with me. Yesterday I ended too late, so today I want to end up a little bit early. Thank you for being here with us on the Nikki Maduro Show. And again, back tomorrow with Nikki. Next is the Mark Thompson Show, and it's going to be really good. We have some great guests coming up. Of course, John Rothman will be on the show today. Also, Senk from TYT is coming on the show as well. It's going to be a really interesting interview, so please stick with us for that. And the Horror King, Jeff Dixon, will also be on the Mark Thompson Show, so that'll be fun to visit with him as well. So stay tuned for the Mark Thompson Show. It is coming up on the Mark Thompson Show channel here on YouTube, and I hope to see you there. Until then, thank you for hanging out with me here on the Nikki Maduro Show this morning, and here's Jacob.
Nikki, you're all so awesome, Miss Brown, like a beautiful blossom. You're all so the best, I really can't rest. You're all so awesome.
Wow. Okay.